This episode is sponsored by FanDuel. Be sure to check out FanDuel today. What is going on, Colts Nation? Welcome back to another episode of Bring the Juice. Guys, bringing you an early edition of the Colts versus the Raiders preview. I am joined by my friend Dennis here. How are you today, sir?
Well, I'm doing okay, and I'm hoping Sunday I'll be feeling better about the Raiders, but I'm not feeling too confident about that.
Well, I mean, hey, there's got to be something that has them looking in the right direction. I heard Aston Genty is starting to find his groove a little bit. Is it because of the stance, or is that just coincidence?
I discussed that with my co-host Stanford Rout on our podcast. The fact is, for those who don't know, in college he had the Mike Myers Halloween stance where he's standing straight up and his arms are basically dangling by his side. When he came into camp, the Raiders wanted him to hunch over more, hands on the knees. He did that for the first 3 weeks. He averaged about 50 yards rushing a game. The Raiders' ground game was just atrocious. So he went back to his college ways. He broke out for 138 yards on 21 carries. He scored 3 touchdowns, which is the most by a Raider rookie since Bo Jackson, 1987. So was it the stance? Was it the Bears' defense? Was it him finally getting on the same page as the Raiders' offensive line? Maybe a combination of all three.
Gotcha. Yeah, I know everyone was talking about it, and it's so funny because obviously the NFL has their way of doing it, like the whole standing up straight thing is so foreign because nobody does it, and then obviously he does it, and it's just such a weird thing. It's a pretty funny thing to talk about. So yeah, I mean, you guys come into this matchup, you're 1-3, you beat the Patriots, and then have had a couple of losses string together. Chargers, it was an 11-point game. Commanders, 17-point. I don't know if I call it a blowout, but let's just say it was a shootout. And then obviously a close loss to the Bears. You saw some light there. Obviously, your team's 1-3. How are you feeling right now about the Raiders and the direction of this team going forward as it stands?
Well, in a normal 16-game season, we'd be at the quarter break, right? There's 4 games. I'll still say that. I would give this team probably a C- right now. Like, they beat the Patriots on the road to open the season. Unfortunately, I think that gave Raider Nation a lot of false hope. I really do. They were outclassed clearly by the Chargers. They lost 20-9, and it wasn't even that close. They were embarrassed by the Commanders. They were defeated in all 3 phases: offense, defense, special teams. The loss to the Bears was absolutely gut-wrenching. Geno Smith, 3 interceptions. Overall, the Raiders turned it over 4 times. Yet at the very end of the game, the defense couldn't stop the Bears on their final drive. The Bears get a touchdown. The Raiders march down the field. Game-winning 54-yard field goal. It's blocked. And so the special teams flops as well. So 3 straight losses heading into this one of the Colts. Before the season began, I said this was a 7-win team at best. I still think that. They've got some talent, but for the most part, the roster is thin, and there's not a lot of backups there right now. So I think they are where they should be at 1-3. I really do.
Gotcha. I know that you guys have dealt with a few different injuries. Give us a little bit of an update on the injury front and feel going into this matchup. I can give you mine after you give me yours.
So we know that the Raiders are going to be without their starting left tackle, Colton Miller. He was injured late in the game against the Bears. They thought it was just a high ankle sprain, but now he's got a hairline fracture as well. And this is an offensive line that has struggled. He is their best offensive lineman. He got a huge contract extension in the offseason. The Raiders going into the Bears game had given up 12 sacks on the season. They didn't give up any against the Bears, but still, any way you slice it, losing Colton Miller is a huge loss for this offensive line, which for the most part has struggled. They've also lost on the other side of the football. Their best corner is Greg Stokes. He's out with a knee injury. They're very weak on the back end. They have really struggled. They played well against the Patriots, but since then, Justin Herbert, Marcus Mariota, not even Jaden Daniels. It was Marcus Mariota in the start against Washington, he carved up the Raiders. And then Caleb Williams, he had his moments, but like I said, the Raiders, when they needed to get a stop on defense, they couldn't do so. So those are the two biggest injuries heading into Sunday's game against the Colts for the Silver and Black.
Yeah, I know the Indianapolis Colts, they were missing three very pivotal starters against the Rams, which definitely hurt us a lot in that matchup. Expecting to get Matt Gonsalves, our starting right guard, back this game, I hope. And the hope is that Alec Pierce, our second wide receiver, will also be back. He missed with a concussion last week. So certainly hope that those guys will be back. A lot of new faces for you guys this year. Geno Smith at quarterback, obviously Pete Carroll as head coach, and a lot of moving pieces when it comes to the overall of the team. Talk to me about Geno Smith. How have you felt about him as the quarterback for the Raiders? Has he passed expectations? Has he went below expectations? How do you feel about him right now?
2 words, below expectations. When Pete Carroll came over, the Raiders had gone through so many starting quarterbacks since they benched Derek Carr and let him go. And the Raider Nation finally felt, okay, Geno Smith, he's going to solve our quarterback issues. He's thrown 7 interceptions through the first 4 games. That's the most in the NFL. Since the start of the 2024 season, he has thrown the most interceptions by a starting NFL quarterback. Now, like I said, the Raiders' offensive line has been shaky at best. He's been sacked 12 times. So you look at the replays, a lot of what's going on, and you feel like, one, Geno was under duress quite a bit. So he has started to force some balls. Then when he's had some times, it's either been a combination of him just staring down his receivers or trying to force a ball in. Now, look, the Raiders, Brock Bowers is one of the best tight ends, but he has been, I would say, limited. He sustained a knee injury in the opener. He's been wearing a brace. He's been playing, but he's not the same Brock Bowers as he was last year, beg your pardon. Jacoby Myers is the top wide receiver. Now, on a given roster, he's probably should be the number 2 wide receiver, but the Raiders are really lacking at the wide receiver position, so he's number 1. So Geno's not playing with the full deck, and I think with the shaky offensive line, with the lack of playmakers right now, he's trying to force a lot of stuff. And as a result, 7 interceptions. Now, on the flip side, he's number 8 in passing yards, but those are kind of empty numbers at this point when you're 1-3 and you've turned the ball over as many times as he has. Now, a lot of Raider Nation is saying, when is Aiden O'Connell back? Well, first of all, Aiden O'Connell's hurt, and he's not even the backup quarterback. That's Kenny Pickett. And look, right. Geno Smith, as many turnovers as he's committed through the first 4 games, he's still the best option at quarterback for the Raiders moving forward. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
Yeah, I know. It's kind of funny to think about with the fact that, everybody talked about how Daniel Jones used to be the turnover guy and, has only 2 turnovers on the year. And both of those came against the Rams where, he faced a lot of different challenges in that one. He faced the most pressure that he had up to that point and an offensive line that was also struggling and, a bunch of other things happening. And, if you do have questions, be sure to throw them at me whenever you want.
Yeah, so that you mentioned Daniel Jones, and I'm curious, what has been the key, do you think, to his resurrection? Because everybody left him for dead pretty much. I don't know if Kevin O'Connell, with the Vikings, sprinkled a little pixie dust on him and turned everything around, but I think Daniel Jones has been one of the bigger surprises in the league through the first 4 weeks. Fair?
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of funny. Like you see all these resurrection quarterbacks, like, you're talking about Baker, you're talking about Sam Darnold, you're talking about Daniel Jones and all these other guys. And, Kevin O'Connell's getting the praise for all of it because he obviously mentioned that, organizations fail quarterbacks more often than quarterbacks fail organizations. So, he's like, all it takes is the right organization and the right pieces around someone to really unlock someone as a quarterback. And, in all honesty, that's very true. And it's kind of been the same way for Daniel Jones here. Again, completing 72% of his passes this year, over almost 1,100 yards passing, is number one in the NFL in QBR with 103.3. But the main key to his success has really just been it has been a collective group of guys that have installed confidence in him. And I think it's a confidence that he's not had in his entire NFL career up to this point. For one, the offensive line. The Indianapolis Colts have a great offensive line when they're fully healthy. And it's far better than anything he's ever had in New York. And, he's only been sacked 4 times this year through 4 games. So that's great to see. And honestly, I think three of those came against the Rams. So, everything was the Rams' fault for these numbers being inflated. But yeah, so the offensive line, and when you have an offensive line that you feel comfortable moving around in the pocket in, you just have a sense of I can make the throws that I know I normally couldn't make. Jonathan Taylor, obviously running like the best running back in the NFL at the moment. Obviously, he's had Saquon before, so he knows what greatness looks like. And a running back, Jonathan Taylor is practically doing the same thing for him. The weapons that he has around him. Michael Pittman, who is just a guy that you can throw anything to, and he's going to get it for you. Alec Pierce, who, if you want to throw a Hail Mary, that is the guy to do it. Josh Downs, who's a route separator. That guy can create space like no other. And then the rookie Tyler Warren at tight end, who, is catching everyone. I don't know if everyone's saying by surprise, but he's living up to the hype of what he's been cast out to be. So, overall, and I think also with Steichen and the way that he's calling the offense, I think it's better than what he had in New York with Dayball and those other guys. I think the way that the offense is moving in a sense that fits the skill set of Daniel Jones. And I think that's what's causing him to have this resurgence of just being hyper efficient, and it's worked so far for Indianapolis.
Well, you mentioned Jonathan Taylor. I want to ask you about him. Like you said, he's leading the league in rushing. Why don't we talk about him? Why don't you hear his name more often about the top running backs in the NFL? We hear about James Cook from the Buffalo Bills, Derrick Henry from the Ravens, Josh Jacobs from the Packers. I never hear Jonathan Taylor's name included, and he is one of the best backs.
Yeah, I don't understand it. I really don't,
I don't either.
because 4 years ago, he was having what a few people were calling an MVP caliber season. He was leading every statistical category in the running back room, and, was single-handedly taking the Indianapolis Colts at the end of the year almost to the playoffs by himself offensively. The numbers he was putting up, that was insane. And sure, he's missed a few games here and there, but it's incredible when you look at the numbers and everyone just is like, everyone's shocked at Derrick Henry's numbers. Jonathan Taylor is just as efficient as Derrick Henry at creating those numbers. And you're right. It's not even just the fact that he doesn't even get recognized, which is so strange that Jonathan Taylor continues to just not really get talked about much. And you're right, because Derrick Henry gets all this talk about him and how great he is. And half the time, and for the same criticisms that people are like, oh, Jonathan Taylor's only getting these numbers because, he leads the NFL in carries. Well, people have been saying that about Derrick Henry for the last 7 years. Nobody's held that against him. Like, why is Jonathan Taylor now getting that criticism? And so what if he has 77 carries? He's still averaging 5.5 yards a carry.
Exactly.
On everything. So I don't know. I really don't understand how he gets lost in the fire. I know that, the Derrick Henrys and the Christian McCaffreys and the Saquon Barkleys and, Bijan Robinson is the next great thing at running back, but Jonathan Taylor's 26 years old and he's still in his prime. And right now he is running like potentially the best running back in football at the current moment. So I don't know why he doesn't get more praise than what he gets. So I don't know. It's very strange. And I can I can go into your defense here with that. So obviously I just mentioned it, Daniel Jones is having a good year. Jonathan Taylor continuing to be a menace. The offensive line, I'm expecting to be back at full strength this next week against the Raiders. And with Alec Pierce coming back, I imagine that all of our offensive unit is going to be available. How do you feel about your defense stacking up against a quarterback that is number one in QBR, the number one rusher, and the offensive line that the Colts have?
Not particularly good at this moment. Outside of Max Crosby, they just simply don't have a lot of playmakers. I mean, Max is still one of the top defensive ends in the NFL. Last weekend against the Bears was the first time he did not record a sack, but he had an interception, and he also had 3 tackles for loss. They are still looking for another pass rusher. The Malcolm Kuntz, who missed all of last year, in 2023, he had 8 sacks. They're still waiting for him to try to get back to that form in 2023. Tyree Wilson, who was their number 1 pick a couple of years ago, they're still waiting for him to perform like a number 1 pick. They've tried him on the outside. They've tried him on the inside. He does have a couple of sacks this year, but he's certainly not playing like a former number 1 pick. And you look at the linebacker situation. I mean, Jamal Adams had hardly played the last 3 years. He's now starting at a linebacker position. Devin White, who was nearly basically out of football last year, he played for 2 teams but hardly played. They're counting on him. There's Jeremy Chin, who they signed as a free agent, came over from the Washington Commanders. Isaiah Palamau, who started most of last year, he can make an impact on the back end. But for the most part, they lost a lot in free agency, and they did not do a particularly great job of signing a lot of top-notch reinforcements. A lot of guys they were counting on to have bounce-back seasons. They played well against the Patriots, limiting them to 13 points, but then they gave up 20 to the Chargers. They gave up 34 points to the Washington Commanders, and then 24 last week to the Chicago Bears. So there's a lot of names on that defense most people are not going to be familiar with outside of Max Crosby.
Yeah, right. Well, I will say this real quick. I appreciate Jonah La'alu that leads you guys with sacks right now. The Indianapolis Colts actually were the ones to draft him. Then we ended up cutting him. So, shout out to him. I noticed that the other week when some of the other Colts guys were talking about him, and that was pretty funny that he leads you guys in sacks right now, which is pretty funny. But yeah, so let's flip this. And
Okay.
I want to talk about your offense going against this Colts defense because I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this defense because I can give you mine. And right now, for the defense, it's kind of weird how I feel about it because there are times when this defense looks absolutely electric. There are times when Lou Anarumo has that defense locked in, and when they're throwing some of this exotic stuff that they have, it messes with teams and it can do a lot of damage. But the problem I have with this defense is it's still not consistent. Right now, the running attack, I mean, we have not been good at stopping the run this year. We haven't, which gives me concern with Genty going back to his stance and figuring out a little bit of his persona back. If that's the case, I very much have concern on how we're going to slow him down. And it's weird too because the Indianapolis Colts, who have Grover Stewart in the middle and DeForest Buckner in the middle, who are 2 of some of the best run-stopping defensive tackles in the league, yet somehow, some way, the rest of our defense just can't follow suit. I hate the fact that that's the case. I'll throw a number at you from last year because it's actually crazy when I think back on it. The Indianapolis Colts in the first 2 weeks of the 2024 season, they had given up 420 yards of rushing. Just rushing. Didn't even include the passing yards. Just that was what, I mean, Houston, I think, ran for like 180 on us, and then Packers ran for like 220 on us. I mean, it's absolutely insane. Just because a few years ago, this Colts defense was widely regarded as one of the better run stopping units in the league. Now it's one of the worst. I don't know. I think it's the linebacker play that's the issue. But when you hear that and you hear about me saying that I don't really have much confidence in this team being able to stop the run, how do you feel about Genty and being able to run the football this week, even with some of the offensive line struggles you guys have had?
Well, I think that's the big question for the Raiders because if you look at the first 3 weeks of the season, the Raiders did not rush for 100 yards in any of those games. Now, last week they rushed for 240, which is the most yards that any team has rushed for so far here in 2025. But was it a one off? Was it an aberration? Or is things going to go back to the way they were the first 3 weeks? I think that's kind of what everybody, all the Raider fans are waiting to see. Now, if the Raiders can get the run game going again, and if Geno Smith can take care of the football, I think maybe that will bode well, set up play action pass. I mean, look, when you see Genty breaking off a 60-something yard touchdown run, eluding tacklers, breaking through tacklers, just his speed, his overall strength, there's no wonder why he was the 6th overall pick in the NFL draft. This guy has got all the physical talent in the world. It's about him getting on the same page with his offensive line. Can that offensive line block? And as I mentioned, Colton Miller's out this week. They've struggled. DJ Glaze is the right tackle. He has struggled. Jackson Powers Johnson is the right guard. He moved from center to right guard. He's in his second season. He missed 2 games with a concussion. Jordan Meredith is the starting center. He's been up and down. Dylan Parham is the starting left guard, and he has not been good. Not at all. He was the starting right guard last year. They moved him to left guard, and it has not been a smooth transition whatsoever. So look, the offensive line has been up and down. Like I said, they gave up 12 sacks going into the Bears game. They didn't give up a one there. They played really well against the Bears, but can they be consistent and do it week in and week out? To me, that's the big question mark for the Raiders offense heading into Sunday's game with the Colts.
Yeah, and as far as that pass rush goes, the Colts pass rush has not been great. The person that actually leads us in sacks right now is our backup defensive end in Tyquan Lewis, who has 2 so far on the year. Latu has started to emerge himself. He gets all these pressures, but it just never really results in a lot of sacks, which is unfortunate. But yeah, that pass rush for the Indianapolis Colts, it's not great. But again, I hear you guys giving up 12 sacks. It's not quite as bad as the Titans, where when we faced the Titans going into our week 3 matchup, they had already given up. I think they said they had given up 12 sacks in the first 2 weeks leading up to our match with them. And I think we got 3 or 4 on them as well during that. So I obviously expect the Colts to get a little pressure on Geno Smith in this matchup. But as far as being able to do the passing attack, so the Colts, they got a bunch of new players. Charvarius Ward here now. Cameron Bynum, who leads the team in interceptions with 2 on the year already. Nick Cross, who is actually our leading tackler so far this year. Don't know who the second outside corner is going to be right now. Xavier Howard literally retired a few hours ago. So he got cooked by Puka Nacua, and now all of a sudden he's like, this isn't worth it, dude. I'm done with this. But and I could go an hour listing the amount of injuries that this corner room has had to deal with throughout the entirety of this year so far. So I'd imagine our undrafted free agent in Jonathan Edwards is probably going to be the one on the outside corner spot there. But, these names that the Colts have, Charvarius Ward, he is one of the best so far this year at lockdown. Cameron Bynum has had numerous interceptions at this point. How do you feel about being able to take on this secondary, which has a lot of bigger names on it now?
Well, I mentioned earlier, Brock Bowers is their best playmaker in the passing game, but he sustained a knee injury in the opener. He's still playing. He's wearing a bulky knee brace. He's still putting up pretty good numbers, but not compared to what he did a year ago. Then Jacoby Myers is their top wide receiver. He's coming off a career year. He wanted a contract extension in the offseason. The Raiders said, nope, not doing it. So he didn't balk. He's been playing. He's Like I said, he's their number one wide receiver. He should be a number two. He's got very good hands. He's very reliable. Then after that, it's a tremendous drop-off. Trey Tucker, he's supposed to be their speed guy. Against the Commanders, he had a career-high 3 touchdown receptions and then kind of disappeared last week against the Bears. Jack Besh was second-round pick out of TCU. He plays in the slot. They have not got any production out of him. So far, he's been a disappointment. And they got another rookie named Thornton. He's from Tennessee. He was supposed to be a speed burner, but he's had some problems with route running. So, look, after you take away Bowers and you take away Myers, you pretty much take away the Raiders' passing game. And I do want to mention Michael Mayer, also the backup tight end. He missed last week's game with a concussion. I'm not sure if he's going to be back or not, but if he's not back, that's another weapon that Geno Smith will be without. So, like I said, right now in the passing game, the Raiders don't have what you would call a bona fide number one wide receiver, and their best tight end, one of the best tight ends in all of football, is not 100%.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, even if Brock Bowers goes out there with a freaking walker at this moment in time, I'd still have concerns on whether or not these linebackers can even cover him. I mean, this linebacker group is like literally the most horrendous thing in the world when it comes to watching them try to guard anyone. I mean, it's really bad. So even if Brock Bowers is not 100%, I look for the Raiders to try to go to him often because he's going to definitely be your best option to moving the offense for sure.
And look, don't discount Genty in the pass game.
I wouldn't be shocked. I hope that the Colts will have a somebody that can cover him. I hope Nick Cross gets the chance to do that because, I mean, again, I don't trust these linebackers to guard anyone out there. So definitely a concern there. All right, well, this is going to come to the end here, but before we leave, I need to get a score prediction from you.
Well, on my podcast with my partner, Stanford Routes, we both went with the Colts. The over-under is 47.5. I went under, and the point spread is, I believe, 6.5. I think the Colts easily cover. I think 28-13, Indianapolis with the victory on Sunday.
All right. I think I said in my prediction on Tuesday, I think I said 27-23 Colts.
Oh, you expect a little bit closer.
Yeah, I expect it to be closer. I think that, again, just with Brock Bowers in the middle, and that's obviously a weapon regardless if he's hobbled or not. And obviously with Genty, I don't think Genty's going to have the same kind of game against us as he did last week, but do expect him to probably get close to 100 yards, keep their offense moving at least a little bit. I do believe that they'll put up some points, but I do believe that the Indianapolis Colts are just a little bit better and more efficient at moving the ball right now. So I will take us to win that one. But Dennis, thank you so much for helping me out. Let the chat know where they can find you.
Well, you can join my partner, Stanford Route, and I on the Believe in Raiders podcast. We got a new one dropping tomorrow. You can find it on Apple.
Sweet. Well, again, thanks, man, for hopping on here and giving us some insight on the Raiders this week.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, thanks, guys, again, for tuning in. Let us know your thoughts on this. Thank you so much. Just want to say again, this episode is sponsored by FanDuel. Appreciate them for sponsoring this. A lot of great things going on with FanDuel right now. As I was saying earlier this week, guys, the Colts are a 6.5-point favorite going into their next matchup against the Raiders. So if you guys are feeling good about that one, take it up right now. Go to FanDuel and click on that. Thank you guys again so much for tuning in. And as always, go Colts.